Okay, thank you so much. Welcome back. I hope that the first part of this talk, workshop, whatever, was not so tiring. I had a few questions by students during the break. I would like to address one of them right now in public because I think it's important. What's your name? Zhuping. So Zhuping asked a very interesting question that I would like to address, and then I will briefly move to what I have planned for the rest of this session. So the question was, is it the same in your country, Croatia, publishing with Springer and these kind of things, and internationally and here? And the answer is pretty much yes. Publishing industry is a global industry. It works pretty much the same regardless whether you are Korean, Croatian, American, or Chinese. There are certain differences. But the English-speaking academia is the biggest in the world, by far, and most things happen in English. There are two smaller, but very big also, academic or free academic spaces. One of them is Spanish, which is Spanish language, which is huge. Chinese language gets bigger and bigger, but Chinese has a problem with automated translations, and that's why it's not so easy to work with Chinese. And traditionally, we also have German and French. But in practice, today, almost everything that kind of is worth publishing will end up in English sooner or later. And speaking of English, we are talking about 5 major publishers, which are Springer, Taylor and Francis, Routledge, Elsevier, and so on, which hold more than 90% of the market. All those 5 publishers will have pretty much exactly the same standards of publications, and all those 5 publishers will have major publishers, will practically use the same production in India. That's pretty much it. It's very globalized, it's very uniform, and it doesn't actually matter whether you do work with Springer or with Taylor and Francis or with somebody else. There are publishers which are emerging publishers, such as MDPI, the Chinese one, quite a big one. But those, but those publishers are not, they hold a small percent of the market at the moment. They are growing, but they still hold a small percent of the market. And also those publishers work, again, exactly in the same global ways. Meaning that pretty much for the purpose of this talk, I could be Korean, I could be Croatian, which I am, I could be American or whatever, and I would give you pretty much 95% of my talk would be exactly the same. It doesn't really matter where you come from. It doesn't really matter what your first language is. There are, in the world, let's just contextualize things a bit more. We usually think about the academia as something huge, but it's actually not so much. There are in the world about 7.5 million of active academic researchers. Now, this study that I'm referring to defines an active academic researcher as somebody who published an academic paper in the last year. And I think that this study I'm talking about is already a few years old. I think it's from 2021 or 2022, but never mind. Let's say there are 7.5 million of active researchers in all fields, from chemistry, biology, social sciences, humanities, and so on, arts in the world. Lingua franca, or the major language, is English, more than 90% of those people do not speak English as the first language. So we are pretty much disadvantaged in similar ways. We are not disadvantaged exactly in the same way, because it's kind of easier to work in English if you come from a European language than if you come from a graphic language, whether it's Korean, whether it's Chinese, whether it's Japanese, wherever you have graphic alphabet instead of letters. It's more difficult for people from those type of languages like yours. But generally, we are all people who work in our second language. So there's not a big difference between you and me in the sense of international publishing. I hope this answers your question. Okay, now let's move on to what I wanted to say. One of the things how publishing industry works is that basically in the past 20, 30 or so years, publishing industry has rapidly changed. Now, you don't feel this change. It seems that as if the publishing industry was always in the same way because we were born in a certain kind of system. But actually, it's quite a new system. So, I work for a public university in Croatia. I write a paper. I give my paper for free to Springer. In Springer, my paper gets processed by an editor who is paid very little or nothing, and then it gets sent to reviewers who are not paid at all. And then my paper gets published, and then it costs $50 to access, and my university needs to pay for me to access my own paper. So I write a paper on company time, paid by Croatian government, and then the same Croatian government needs to pay access to the same paper. Unfortunately, academic publishing is one of the most extractive industries in the world, with huge profits. It's exploitative. It's deeply exploitative. Basically, my work and your work and everybody else's work is being exploited for profit. Private shareholders. And at the same time, those people from Malaysia, India, and so on, format those papers and everything for peanuts, for nothing. They get paid so little that it's incredible. Why? Because publishers are global corporations. They cut their cost anywhere they can in order to make the biggest possible profit. If you want to publish open access, some journals will ask you $3, $4, $5, up to $10,000 for one paper to publish open access. Now, this is a sad reality of academic publishing. Academic publishing is a broken system. It has been broken for a long time. And the whole thing started actually not so long time ago. The whole thing started roughly in 1990s. Before 1990s, every decent university, probably included yours, had its own journal or own journals and own book series that they would publish, and then they would sell and so on. The thing is that in the 1990s, with some media magnates and so on, and I'm not going to go deep into this, we have seen mergers. So those publishers have become bigger and bigger until they effectively created an oligopoly. You know what's an oligopoly? Monopoly is when one company dominates. Oligopoly is when few companies dominate the whole market. So they effectively created an oligopoly. Now, this oligopoly works in the way that it creates a lot of money for publishers, shareholders, from your work and from public money of your university, my university, and other universities. Now, how did we allow that to happen? How did we, as academics, as a community, allow that to happen? That's an interesting question because it's not an old thing. There are still people, alive people, walking the corridors of your university who remember times when things were different. I'm sure that you have old professors walking around here who will, if you buy them a cup of tea, who will tell you in detail how it used to be 40 years ago. And it was really, really very different. Now, one reason is because today we live in the world where everything is quantified. So instead of talking to you and saying, what are you doing? Okay, so you are doing whatever, linguistics. What kind of linguistics are you doing? Well, etc., etc. Instead, I say, okay, how many papers do you publish? Here, tap, 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 how many points, and that's it. I have, there are automatic systems that actually calculate your score, and then your score qualifies you for job, for further study, for this, for that. Now, this academic system is particularly suitable for that because all those publishers aggregate in something that we call academic databases of academic knowledge. Databases like Scopus, databases like SSCI, and so on. So when you actually want to publish something, you want to publish strategically in the journal which is listed in a certain database, because this article will bring you certain points in your automated system, and then these points will give you a job, a position, etc., etc., etc. It all works really well, in a sense, because it's quite easy to rank. Now I've got 50 of you in front of me, and now I can rank. You are 25, you are 27, you are 14, you are 54. So it's easy to make decisions such as enrollments and so on. But actually, what does it say about the quality of your work? What does the ranking say about the quality of your work? Let's take a look. I will use the database called Scopus, and I will use the journal Postdigital Science and Education. Okay, what we have here is something called the site score. Now, some databases call it impact factor. It's basically, it takes this number, takes all the documents or all the articles published in the journal, puts them here. It takes all incoming citations to this article, puts them here. And it says, every article in Postdigital Science and Education, in average, has 12.2 citations. Scopus calls it site score. SSCI calls it impact factor, but it's the same number. Okay? Now, you can pick your category, like social sciences, arts and humanities, and so on. And you can say, okay, so we are there are 674 articles, journals in category social sciences. Post-digital science and education is currently on 8th place in the world. Very simple. It means that we are quite highly cited. It means that perhaps you've heard of these quartiles, like Q1, Q2, Q3, it's obviously Q1, because it's in top 25% of all the most cited journals in the field. And then you actually get here, you actually see how your journal is ranked. Now, if you publish in a place like this, it's obvious that you will be, it's a good thing, right? Let's take a look at the year before. I'm quite proud of this. In this year, we were probably the second most cited journal in the world. Now, the problem is the different databases. This is Scopus. And Scopus counts in Europe, continental Europe mostly, not in the UK, but in continental Europe, in places like Germany, France, Spain, Croatia. Scopus counts in some parts of America, but it doesn't count in Korea. In Korea, what you have is SSCI, which is Web of Science. Now, the thing is that currently, Postdigital Science and Education is not listed in SSCI at all. Okay, why? Well, journals get listed in the databases based on certain criteria. In Scopus, you need to have 2 years of continuous publication. Then there's about 1 year of evaluation. And then sometime in year 4, you can get listed. So we did get listed in year 4, and we are now in year 7, and that's practically it. So you have this 4, 5, 6, 7, okay? But Web of Science, SSCI, allows you to apply only after 5 years. And then evaluation process takes about 2 years. So we applied to the Web of Science last year, but I still don't know the outcome. We still didn't hear the results. Maybe we will be included in the Web of Science, maybe in SSCI, maybe we will not. Given the fact that we are top 10 in the world, we probably will be included, right? But I don't know. I cannot tell you whether we will be included because theoretically, they can reject us for some reason. Okay, now, and this shows you actually the whole absurdity of the system. So you will have a journal that's maybe not in place number 2, but in place number 520, but it is including in SSCI. So you will have a much worse journal, which will actually count for your promotion, and much better journal will not count for your promotion. For instance, if you just take a look at the numbers. But numbers can be manipulated. Now, one of the reasons why I did this, okay, so let's see, I would like to show this, okay, this graph here, okay? So we had our site score or impact factor, we had it growing. I think that the biggest one was 19 point something, and now it's 12 point something. And there's a reason for this. In 2023, I think, we were the second in the world. But playing the citation game is problematic. Because what gets cited? What's popular gets cited. So today we have, everybody's writing about artificial intelligences. So you publish about artificial intelligences. Your papers do not necessarily be very good, need to be very good, but they will be cited because they are exploring a popular theme, a popular topic. But if you explore something that everybody else is exploring just to chase popularity, does it make you a good journal? A good journal is a place which actually brings new topics, which brings fresh ideas. A good academic journal is a place where you can actually go against the mainstream. where you can actually explore things that are perhaps not popular. So if you chase numbers, you actually end up in the situation where your quality drops. In order to do some new things, we deliberately dropped down our citation rate. And do you know why? Because we opened two new topics. While everybody was talking about artificial intelligences, we opened the topic of post-digital feminism, and we opened the topic of post-digital approaches to the global south. I think that both topics are hugely important. First, because we know that gender equality online is not as it should be. We know that women, unfortunately, have more difficulty publishing, less readership, less citation, and all that than men in average. We know it's a problem. We know that there's a lot of online discrimination. We know there's a lot of sexism, misogyny, and all those things on places like TikTok. I mean, many of you have met these things online. I mean, you live online. So you know that online places are places which are maybe not so comfortable for women always, right? And we need to address this thing. It's a hugely important social justice thing. And then there's also the global south. Like the idea that we are theoretically equal, but only theoretically. Practically, the US dominates. China has overtaken, I think, last year in the number of published papers, but not in the number of citations. So the thing is that we actually have the situation in which, although the online world theoretically gives us all equal chances, in practice, chances are not equal. You are Korean, and let's face it, you have more trouble publishing than somebody who is English. That's it. Goodbye. If you are Korean and if you're a woman, then you have even more trouble publishing than an English man or an American man. It's a fact, we know that. It's uncomfortable true, but it's true. Now the question is, how do we address those inequalities? Do you think it's important? Okay, it is important. But addressing this drops our citation rate. Because if you just wrote about AI and how to use AI in whatever, then we would have the highest whatever citation rate. Okay? But it would be producing more of the same. If you want to open a new topic, if you want to open something that's important for people, sometimes you need to go against numbers. I'm showing you this as the example of journal, but the same thing applies to your personal careers. And this is what your professor was saying, and but now perhaps between the lines, and now I'm saying it completely openly. I understand that you need to, for those automated scores, that you need to publish in certain SSCI journals, certain numbers of papers, certain numbers of this and that. And I understand that it's probably easiest to go to an MDPI or some journal like this, which has quite a low score, which is not perhaps very difficult to publish in, but it will give you the most points. And I understand that you need to focus on the points, because you need the next job, you need the next placement, you need the next thing. But you should not focus only on that. There is also the part of creating a community, of meeting different people. If you have 3 papers, maybe it's enough to send 2 papers to the journal like this and 1 paper somewhere else. Or if you have a situation where somebody, where you know that this journal is not in SSCI today, but it will probably be tomorrow, maybe publish in a place like that. Or if you know that I mean, it's because it's not just about the numbers. Chasing the numbers game is hugely important because you need it for your careers. But if you only chase the numbers game and do nothing else, you become empty of content. You become a scholar who is here for the numbers and not for the scholarship. Top universities, including this one, will want you to have both. They will want you to have both the numbers and the meaning behind the numbers. Too many young people these days chase just numbers. And I'm not saying that you should not chase numbers because it's huge. Again, it's important for your sustenance, it's important for your living. But I'm suggesting you to try to find some balance in your personal careers, in your personal publishing plan, between creating communities, connecting to people that you want to connect to, and numbers. In the journal, it means, so we were in number 2, we dropped the impact factor to number 8. I think it's okay. I mean, being a top 10 in the world is fine. We don't need to be second exactly. We need to be number 8. We could be 25th as well. The thing is that we are high enough and address important topics at the same time. That we balance numbers and meaning. Now, I showed you this at the example of the journal, but actually, I would like you to think, each of you, as a homework, about achieving this balance in your own scholarship. So all of you here would like to publish something in the next few years. When you publish, when you plan what you will publish about, topics that you will publish about, where you will publish those topics, those things, you should think about both numbers and the community and the meaning and everything else that we talked about today. So when you create your personal publishing plan, and all of you probably have some kind of, somebody came to me, I'm planning to publish this is my first paper, and then I'm planning to do this is my second paper. Fine. That's called the personal publishing plan. So when you plan like this, you should really plan places where you will publish, like journals, impact factors, inclusion in SSCI and everything in one go. That you get to the best of both worlds. That you play the game of numbers, because you need to play the game of numbers. I understand. Unfortunately, that's your destiny. But also to play this other game to give meaning to your scholarship. The more meaning you give to your scholarship, the better scholars you will be in the future. The more, and one more thing, I told you this game of numbers is not an old game. It started only in the 1990s, and there are still old professors out in the corridor who remember the times before. You need to live, you need to work for the next 40 years. Who says that this game will continue for the next 40 years? What happens if this game just quickly changes? I mean, things change a lot. We live in the time of change. You play one game, you chase only numbers, and then somebody changes the rule of the game and you're out. In order to think about your future, you need to play the game of numbers carefully. Now, this is not something that many people will tell you, especially not as openly as this. But let's face it, you need to manipulate those things. You need to manipulate numbers. You need to find some balance between numbers and meaning in order to make your academic life not only meaningful, but also sustainable in the long run. What you want to do, you want to survive in this field for the next 40 years. You don't want to meet today's benchmarks, and that's it. Because tomorrow, those benchmarks will change. And if you're empty, if you have nothing but those benchmarks, you're screwed. You need to have both. Okay? Just quickly.
Peter, can you share the example of a couple of scholars who are playing the games well, but it has reputation?
Yeah.
I think, that would be helpful.
Well,
I mean, you don't have to show that person, but just explain that situation to students.
Yeah, well, there will be articles which will be very, very, very cited for some reasons. And those articles will also often be articles which will not be so maybe meaningful even. So, today, hype of the day is Gen AI, generative artificial intelligence. Whatever you write about generative artificial intelligence will actually get more clicks. So you write an average article about Gen AI, and you will get more citation than an excellent article about cultural differences between whatever communities in Korea. Simply because Gen AI is today something that rocks the boat. The problem is, and you, again, you need to do those things because you want the clicks, you want the citations, you want inclusions and so on. But again, it's not the best idea to do just those things for the same reason. Yeah. Just quickly, one or two questions before I move on because it's kind of I'm getting late. Any questions? Comments? Okay. The other thing I would like to address here, and I think it's really important, as a journal editor today, and I know that this presentation is quite messy. I mean, this is a workshop, and I came here as an editor, and I'm a professor as well, but I came here as an editor, and I didn't want to give you very structured presentation in the sense of, you should do this and this, because there are plenty of writing workshops that you've got that you can take. I wanted to give you some snapshots, some insights into editor's practice, which you cannot get elsewhere. That was the whole point of this today's presentation. Now, the biggest challenge I am meeting at the moment personally is people using generative artificial intelligences in their work. ChatGPT, Gemini, other technologies. So, you will do some type of research. You will write it, wrap it up with the help of ChatGPT or something, and you will submit the paper to me. What do you think I will do? Any ideas? Okay. The first problem is that people often do not acknowledge the use of Gen AI. You saw how many papers I've got per year, per day? I'm reading those papers, and trust me, I read hundreds, thousands of papers per year. I can see when you use Gen AI. I can, after one page, after 2 pages, I know this person has used Gen AI. Copy a paragraph or two, go to the free online Gen AI detector, puff, 90% written by Gen AI. Is there an acknowledgement? No, reject. If you did not acknowledge the use of Gen AI, I will reject you automatically. No questions asked. It can be used only for language refining. It doesn't need to be used for developing ideas and so on. But if I see that your paper has been, that you have been using Gen AI in your paper, and if you did not acknowledge exactly what you used, how to use, and why you used it, I will reject it immediately. And I will also put you on the blacklist so that you won't submit to me anytime soon, because I don't want to play this game. Okay, if you did use Gen AI, and if you acknowledged the use of Gen AI properly, then it's another story. You honestly admitted, I used Gen AI for this and this. Okay, let's see what you did. You passed the initial screening, at least I will read. If you don't acknowledge, I'm not reading. If you acknowledge, you've got my attention. The problem with Gen AI is, I don't want to give you a lecture now about how Gen AI works, but basically, in a few sentences, Gen AI aggregates best writing practices and applies those best writing practices to your paper. And this is why Gen AI is really useful and tempting for non-native English speakers. Because Gen AI will make your English more readable. I would not say better. And I will explain why. The problem is that Gen AI will give you probabilities. It will say, okay, so a human writer would probably write this in this way. Okay? This is what Gen AI would do. Now the thing is that Gen AI papers will all look very similar. They will all look pretty much the same. They will not make you stand out. English is not my first language, but I have been working with English texts for now more than 20 years. And I can feel differences in style. Maybe you don't feel differences in style in English, but I'm sure that you will feel differences in style in Chinese, and that you will feel differences in style in Korean. You know what I mean by differences in style. Simply, Gen AI will give you a flat text which could be written by anybody, which does not stand out in any way, and which generally is not something I would like to publish. It's not something I would like to read. Now, there are cases in which I will accept the use of Gen AI for some reason, this or that reason. We can talk about these reasons in more detail. Things like Gen AI can crunch numbers, Gen AI can give us insights that we would not get. Gen AI has certain advantages over human thinking. It can connect things that we would not normally connect and so on. But basically, in terms of writing your paper about relationship between argument and whatever, what was the paper about again? Sorry. What was the paper about that you mentioned?
Narrative and argument.
Sorry?
Narrative and argument.
Okay, so relationship about narrative and argument. Sorry, you are writing about narratives and argument. Your language needs to be good. Your language needs to be creative. Your language needs to be smooth. If you write about narratives and use ChatGPT, goodbye, don't do it. Okay? In some cases, you can use Gen AI. Like you are crunching some numbers. You are doing statistical analysis of 120 Korean schools about this or that, and then you tell ChatGPT, describe table 5. And then ChatGPT will say, 35% of students do this, 25% of students do this. For these kind of purposes, okay. I don't like it, but generally it will be fine. But for the purpose of like introducing the text, introducing your ideas in the article, discussing your ideas in the article, concluding your article like conclusion, absolutely no Gen AI. The thing is that Gen AI right now, what is Gen AI doing, it's hugely, hugely powerful. Gen AI is currently transforming the publishing industry, not just the publishing industry, it transforms whole knowledge industry. I mean, we are all knowledge workers, right? I, as a professor, am a knowledge worker. Your Professor Lee is a knowledge worker. Additionally, we also act as editors, so we work also in some capacities in academic publishing, but basically our main work as professors is work with knowledge. I don't work with hot water boilers, I don't work with cars, I don't work with buses, I don't work with bicycles, I work with knowledge. Now, Gen AI has brought a big disruption into the industry of knowledge. Why? Because knowledge is traditionally described using language, through language, and Gen AI has now come to the position at which it actually imitates human language. The problem is that Gen AI cannot fundamentally create new knowledge because it works on existing data sets and so on. So basically, it's kind of restrictive. But also, the problem is that we are now literally facing a huge amount of material. Because now, pretty much everybody can come and they can say, okay, I want to do this. Take ChatGPT, write something that sounds okayish, and send to the journal. Since the launch of ChatGPT, pretty much all academic journals have experienced significant growth in the number of submissions. The problem is, when you take your own topic and when you take ChatGPT, this text will look fine. But from the position of journal editor, when you get 100 of such texts, they all look the same. They all look the same. You can feel that they are all, and then you can check them in checkers, and then you actually see that they all look the same. Now, different journals have different policies about Gen AI. Journals like Postdigital Science and Education, who are some of the top in the world, have a bit stricter policies than others. You will probably find journals, even SSCI journals, with, let's say, lower ranking or lower quality, that will allow those things. But in the long run, there are two problems with it. First, you want to establish yourself as the author. When you are, as an academic author, you are not an artist, you are not Shakespeare. But you are required to write clearly, properly, academic English. The only way to do it is to develop your own writing skills. And this is why it's so amazing that you are here at this workshop today, and thanks a lot for coming. You need to, it's not enough to outsource those things to the machine. You need to do it on your own. Because only by developing your own skills is the way that you will stand out. Think about it in another way. You all have ChatGPT, access to Gemini, access to ChatGPT, and so on. And now somebody will say, yeah, but not everybody can write good prompts, right? So somebody is still better than others. Okay, fair enough. But the point is that too many people, you are drowning yourself in the sea of competition. If 50 of you all write papers with ChatGPT, they're all the same papers. How do I know which one is better, which one is... I mean, it doesn't work. You will never stand out. You will remain in the crowd. Now, in order to stand out, you need to develop your own skills. And also, ideally, in writing, and I would really advise this, you should try to develop your own style. When I say style, I mean the way of writing, the way of presenting. We have different styles. Professor Lee comes here, talks to you. I come here and talk to you. We have different styles. I'm not saying that one style is better than the other, because it's not. They are both as good as bad or bad as you want them to be. But they are distinct. You will know that this is Professor Lee and that this is me. People will be recognizable. I'll give you one more example. In the journal, I often get, you get papers that are anonymized, right? I showed you how the whole system works. So other journals send me papers that are anonymized. I will recognize Professor Lee's paper. Fully anonymized, I will recognize it because of the style of writing. I will actually recognize probably at least 50 to 100 of my closest associates. I will know who wrote the paper without seeing who wrote it. Because there is distinct style. Somebody writes in this way, somebody writes in that way. Somebody presents, somebody thinks in this way, somebody thinks in that way. Somebody presents themselves in a certain way. What you want to achieve as a future academic is not being the same as everybody else. What you want to achieve is being just a little bit unique, just a little bit different than anybody else. You don't need to be very different. It's not about everybody becoming a superstar academic like Slavoj Žižek. It's not about that. And the world doesn't need too many superstar academics anyway. But it is about adding your bit of originality to the discourse, to this world. This is why I was talking to a professor the other day. So how did you get the job? So after being selected with points by an automated system, you come to the interview, and it's a serious interview, and you give your lecture, and somebody looks at how you give your lecture, and somebody looks at how you behave, and somebody looks how you talk to people, because that's your distinct contribution. You have your teachers here at the university. It's not about, do you know which teacher wrote, who is your most famous teacher, author? But you know how those people approach things. You know what's distinct with those people. This small distinction from everybody else is what makes you a good academic researcher. It's what makes you good material for success in the academia. Now, using generative artificial intelligences, ChatGPT, Gemini, hurts you in two main ways. First, it hurts you because your papers, your output, will look the same like everybody else, or so similar, that you will not have this distinct edge. You will not be different than others. But second, using Gen AI in the same way takes away an opportunity to develop your own style. And that's even more important. When you use it, you don't develop. And it takes years to develop a distinct style. Just a little bit different. Korea is a big country compared to Croatia. And it's a small country compared to China. Now, how many academics are there? How many universities are there? How many people are there? And then there are some fields and then so on. And now you have somebody like your professor who managed to create a distinct style of something. Do you think it's easy? It takes a lot of work. It takes years of work to create something distinct. And if you use Gen AI, you will simply never develop in this direction. You will always remain average. Which is okay if you want to remain average, but it's not going to give you a career in the academia. If you want to do your master's, your PhD, and if you want to go to the industry, if you want to go to work in a bank, or if you want to work for Samsung, okay, do it. But if you want to become a professor, if you want to become an academic researcher, you're shooting yourself in the leg. Using generative artificial intelligences, you are literally killing your chances to become something in the future. Two different things. One thing is taking away your future from you, and the other thing is basically creating average, mediocre papers that nobody wants to read and that most people don't want to publish. I definitely don't want to publish them. Maybe somebody will, but I don't want to publish them. So you are Korean, and I understand that your language is not perfect. I can see that your name is whatever. I see that it's not European. Okay? I understand that your language will not be what they call Queen's English. I understand that your language will be that you will have difficulty. But I will appreciate as the editor that you took the effort and that you did something original. If you use ChatGPT, I will say, one more. That's it. Goodbye. So that's the, I'm saying this because Gen AI is one of the biggest challenges of academic publishing today, and this is where I just want to speak for 3 or 4 minutes and then finish my talk. Knowledge industry has never been static. Knowledge industry has always changed. Academic articles, academic journals were established sometime during 18th century. Before that, we didn't have academic journals. We just had books. You had philosophy books, but you didn't have journals and journal articles. Peer review. Peer review came much, much, much later. In some fields, peer review came after, even at the beginning of 20th century. You will have scholars like Einstein who published papers without any peer review, simply because at that time, with some peer review, but not in today's sense of double-blind peer review. Actually, double-blind peer review in the form that we know it today is quite new. Journal systems, the idea that now books don't matter and that the only thing that matters is articles in SSCI, is actually even newer. It's the dominance of articles has begun in the 1970s, 80s, perhaps 90s, depending on the field. And the dominance of databases is the 21st century invention. So knowledge industry has always been quite dynamic. It has always changed very rapidly. Historically, it has changed very rapidly. Try to read a book or two about it and you'll see what I mean. Now, you feel that it's like this, that it's cast in stone, because you were born, you were brought in a certain type of system. But this system is new, fairly new historically. It can change. It might change in your lifetime. Actually, I would bet that it will change in your lifetime. Now, the major change and the major hype at the moment is generative artificial intelligences, which definitely brought a lot of disruption within the existing knowledge industry. Student assessment, this, that, I mean, you know a lot about those things. I don't have to speak about those things. But to be honest, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether Gen AIs will change. I don't know whether the recommendation I gave you today, maybe 5 years from now I will come again and I will give a completely different recommendation to some new generation of students because circumstances will change. Again, knowledge industry is a dynamic industry, and you need to follow, you need to be up to date with what happens in the industry. What I'm telling you from the position of somebody who has a top 10 in the world journal, now let's be modest, right? I'm telling you what happens today, like very today. It doesn't apply to yesterday, it may not apply to tomorrow, but it applies to today. So what I would like you to think about, I wouldn't like you to see this presentation, today's presentation, as something that's cast in stone. I would not like you to see this as something that now professor from Croatia presented this and now it's the Bible or whatever. I want you to look at those things critically. I want you to understand that it's my opinion, it's not general opinion. It works for the moment here and now. I honestly gave you experiences of a journal editor today, as we speak. And yeah, the closer you are to this moment, tomorrow my recommendation will probably work. In 5 years' time, it may not work anymore. But I think that I gave you quite a lot of food for thought. I think that you need to take a look at those. So, pay attention to political economy of academic publishing. It's not just about having a good paper and publishing in a good place. It's about much more. Create your own personal plan, stick to it, and your own personal plan should somehow balance those requirements in terms of automated systems and numbers with this different quality. Try to balance those two things because it's good for you in the long run. But I cannot tell you how to balance them. Each of you will have their own way of doing it. I'm just saying pay attention to this. Generative artificial intelligences, for now, are probably a bad idea. In terms of using them for writing your papers, in most cases, they will be a bad idea. I'm not saying that they will not be a good idea tomorrow, but for now, I think I made it abundantly clear why they are a good idea, why they are a bad idea today. And I think that with this outtake, I would like to finish this presentation and just open very quickly for a couple of questions. Any thoughts? Any questions?
It's not a big question, but do you have your own training tip for us to follow when, as you say, it takes like a lot of years for us to be a great, not great, but better writer. So do you have any tips for us? Not just do your best. Not just do your best, but is there any specific tips you can give us?
Well, the thing is that it's all really, really individual. And this is why I'm giving you problems and food for thought rather than solutions, tips. The problem with tips is that what works for you may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for me. Generally, tips are very, unfortunately, you would probably tell that to your kids as well. You need to read as much as you can. You need to read other people's work. You need to be a part of the community. Not just the community here in Korea, and not just the community here in your university, but the community so you are researching a certain topic, you find a good journal, you find a good place, you find people who write similar things. They will be international, they will always be from 5 continents. This is your community. This is your virtual community, like on whatever the social network you are using. When you work with this community, It's equally important to write, to review other people's works, and to participate in scholarly discussions, to participate in what goes on a daily basis. And yeah, I mean, those are the tips. All the rest is really just on you. Unfortunately, this is, I mean, I know that many people don't want to hear it, but the academia is, I mean, it's a difficult game. It's a game in which you're alone, and it's because your supervisor, she's your supervisor for a reason. She knows a lot. But your supervisor, when you're a PhD student, does not necessarily know about your topic. Actually, you probably know more about your topic than your supervisor knows. You are the one who is responsible for yourself. So you are alone. And second, you're naked. When I say naked, I mean exposed. I mean you're exposed in a sense that whatever you do, whatever you write, I'm now naked in front of you because I'm in public. This is a public appearance. You can see whether I had a good night's sleep. You can see whether I have an itchy head. You can see I'm in front of you. So as an academic, you are constantly being alone and naked in front of other people. It's not an easy position to be in. It's a position that you need to handle psychologically with a certain, I mean, and each of us handles those things in a different way. Some of us tend to embrace this openness and nakedness. Other people tend to not do it so much, not go around and give talks, but rather sit in the room and write. So there's different answers to this position based on your background, culture, and in individual psychology. I mean, we are all different people. But this is why I cannot give you more precise tips, because this is not the play. I mean, because it's different, because it's 50 of you in the room. I could work with you for 3 years and supervise you, and then I would probably, after year 2 or in year 3, I would be able to give you some personal advice. But even then, I would need at least 1 year to get to know you really well in order to be able to give you personalized advice. I cannot now hear your story in 15 minutes and say, okay, you should do this and problems of your life will be solved. I mean, it doesn't work like that. So this is the thing. Unfortunately, you need to be an academic, not just in what you do, not just in your academic writing. You need to be an academic when you are not writing. You need to be an academic. You need to take a look at those systems of academic publishing and so on from a political economy perspective, from a political perspective, even without economy, from an economical perspective, from this perspective, from a personal perspective. And then you can actually try to approach and find the best solution for you. And this is what I'm actually, and this is probably my main message, is that nobody can you are alone. And by the way, this is why academia is full of ego and full of all those things, because people who build something alone tend to also have some other features as well. But this is the main thing. Any other question?
I have questions about the genre picking a right genre. So when I think about how to pick a right genre, I was really surprised that over than 90% of the genre were rejected in a really fast. So I'm really afraid about that. So as a young researcher, one of the genres that I'm really interested in is education and technology. And most of the genres, their scope are really broad. So over than 10 keywords are included in those genre scope. So I think that most of the rejected journals authors, of course, that they try to find the right journal and they try to write the genre fit. However, they are rejected. So I think that how can I make sure that the paper fits well? I think there are some practical tips. So for example, like you have to find the journal first and then write, or you have to read about the previous journals over than 15 or 20, like those things related to my topic. So do you have any other really practical tips that we have to consider before we find the right journal? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your question. You will not be happy with my answer. I usually tell to my students, I'm not sure whether it's culturally acceptable in Korea, but I will risk. You need to have a big ass. You know what I mean? You need to sit on your chair for hours and work. That's the answer. So, it's not about the keywords. Yeah, you have 10 keywords. But actually, go to the journal and read 50 papers. Not skim, read. 50 papers, 1 hour per paper, 50 hours. Sit for 1 week and read the journal. You will, it's because what I said about yesterday, somebody asked me, I think that I finished yesterday's talk about why are we here together. And I said, it's not just about the facts, it's about the feeling. That's what you need to develop. When you read a journal, it's not just about the keywords. It's not just about the things. It's about the feeling. After you read enough, after you've read a lot, you will get a feeling which is not just rational, which is also irrational. You will get the intuition. And the feeling and the intuition develops with time. Now again, in my country, and I appreciate that it may not be culturally sensitive, we literally have a saying, you need a big ass. Because the big ass meaning that you need to sit on your chairs for many hours and work. One journal, another journal, another journal. You need to read things. Many students make the mistake that they start writing before they read enough. You need a good literature review. So whenever you start your paper, whatever the paper is, you will need a good literature review. Who did what in this field before me? Now, when you do a good literature review in Scopus, in Web of Science, in Google Scholar, you will notice that some names are repeating, that some people have more than one paper. You will also notice that some journals are repeating, then some journals publish more articles in your field than others. This is the place where you will read. So if you are doing a narrative and argumentation, and you identify 100 papers about narrative and argumentation, 10 of which are in one journal, 7 of which are in one journal, 5 of which are in one journal, and then the rest is scattered like one paper per journal. Those are the first 3 journals that you will read. If there's certain authors, type the name of the author, go to Google Scholar, sort by year, newest to oldest, and take a look where these people are publishing. You will narrow it down to 3 to 5. When you narrow it down to 3 to 5, then read every journal. Not keywords. Everything. Like description, aims, scope, goals. Online first. Newest articles. 20. Read at least 10, one by one. But every word. Not skim. Not abstract and conclusion. Every word. Then go back. Then read 5 selected articles from 2024, 5 selected articles from 2023. Spend a few days. You will notice 2 or 3 more names that kind of repeat. Go to those names. Go to their profiles. I mean, unfortunately, it's work. And people are looking for shortcuts. Every time somebody asks me for tips, like you ask me for tips and you ask me for tips, You are basically asking for a shortcut. Unfortunately, there are not many shortcuts that I'm aware of. Don't kill the messenger. It's not me. It's the nature of the game. Ask your professor how many hours she invested in order to become what she is today. Unfortunately, the more shortcuts you take, the more problematic or the less successful work you will be. It's very simple. Unfortunately, work. And Gen AI will not help you there. Because you can ask ChatGPT to give you 5 main names in the field, and you can ask ChatGPT to give you this and that, and it will be wrong. It will be even worse. It will not be wrong, but it will be a combination of right and wrong, and you will not be able to see what's wrong and what's right. If you really want a shortcut, and that's probably the only shortcut that really works, then find a scholar who is really knowledgeable in your narrow field and somehow get this person to talk to you and actually ask those questions. They will be able to help you because they did the same work before you. But basically that's it. Unfortunately, there's not many shortcuts. Sorry. Yep. I think we are pretty much done. Thank you so much.
Great.
Yeah.
To close this session. So thank you so much